Ben Bergeron, welcome back to the Mindset Advantage podcast. I'm so excited for the conversation today. You were on the show about a year ago, and that show is one of the top 3 most downloaded shows that we've ever done. So I love you. My audience loves you. Welcome back. I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, enjoyed it last time and excited for this one.
Yeah, this one's going to be unique, man. I had the idea. I saw your Instagram post a couple weeks ago about you've been coaching for 15 years at the highest level possible. Now you're going into some new ventures, but I thought, you know what? We got to recap the last 15 years. And I'm sure you've done a lot on your own. And the Instagram post kind of sparked the idea of what if we went through 15 lessons in 15 years of coaching CrossFit Games athletes. And you were nice enough to jump in on this and put together a phenomenal list. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through each of the 15 lessons you've learned in 15 years. And who knows, maybe this will spark the next Ben Bergeron book. Who knows?
Yeah, what's nice is I was able to learn one lesson each year. It's amazing how that works.
it was perfect.
Yes.
Well, good. So we're going to walk through each one. We're going to jam on some. We're going to move past some other ones and see if we can dig through it. We were talking off here about the coolest part about these lessons, Ben, is that it's universal. So if you're a CrossFit Games athlete or just an everyday CrossFit competitor, whoever you are, these lessons apply to you. It's not just for athletes. I think that's probably the best part.
Yeah, I don't think it's unique to the elite athletes. I don't think it's unique to athletes. I think that the lessons that we learn in sport, echo in our everyday lives. And that's what, sport is supposed to do. Sport is supposed to be, you put a magnifying glass on life, right? And you can't hide. And things are just like, it's life exaggerated. Like in life, you can kind of get away with a victim mentality. In sport, it gets exposed. And in life, you can kind of get away with some levels of complacency. In sport, it gets exposed. In life, there's people tend to do a little bit better if they have the right mindset, process, procedures, people around them. In sport, that gets magnified. So it's one of the reasons I love athletics. I love sport. Love the last 15 years. And it's why I'm still coaching. I'm just not doing it with the best of the best. I'm doing it with the rest.
Love it. Let's dive in. The first one. It's never about one event, one race, or one test.
Yeah, this is especially in our sport, CrossFit, at the games where there's usually somewhere between 12 to 15 events. It's obvious you want to do well in every event, but if you do well in one, it doesn't mean your weekend's done and you're good to go and you're going to coast to the finish line, and vice versa is also true. If you have a rough event and you finish lower than your expectations, it doesn't mean that you can't come back from it. And particularly in our sport where there's 15 events, not just 4 quarters, 3 periods, whatever it might be, but even more so in our sport, and our sport really mimics life because, if you have a bad first half in a football game, well, the second half, you're playing the same sport, trying to move the ball down the field and prevent the other team from scoring against the same team. So the iterations and changes you make are very small. But in our sport, in one event, you're biking. In the next event, you're lifting weights. In the next event, you're going through an obstacle course. So it's really, really, you got to turn the page and get yourself set up for the next one. You don't have enough time. You don't even have a couple of days like they do in basketball or hockey. You don't have a week like they do in football. You don't have a day or two like they do in baseball. You got to get ready for the next event in potentially minutes. So we got to get really good at turning the page, learn the lessons, have the emotions, but then move on. This is not life or death. It's not going to be about this event. Let's get focused on the next one.
I love this. As a mental performance coach, one of the things I like to teach is a tactic called learn, burn, return. Let's learn the lesson, let's burn it, and then let's return back to present mode. I'm curious, in a lot of these lessons, I'm going to ask a lot of, how did you do this, Ben? When you're at the games in California or you're in Madison, how did you help your athletes stay present and, to use your words, turn the page? What did that look like?
Yeah, we systemized it. And when the saying was turn the page, but you can't turn the page before. First, you have to have some emotions. You got to let the emotions happen. If you don't, it's going to be suppressed. So let's say someone's really bummed out because they failed to execute. The judge gave them made a mistake, whatever it might be, you got to let that frustration, you got to let that anger, you got to let that sadness, you got to let that come through. Then as quickly as we can, but not too quickly, as quickly as we can, we go through a process called SEA, which is a way for us to systematically walk through the events. Because what ends up happening is you go like, as a coach, you're like, how'd it go? Or you do the opposite. You're like, you should have done this. This is what was missed. And this way we walk through it, but the athlete leads the process. SEA. S is, how do you feel about our strategy? Was the strategy right? Was it wrong? What could we have done differently? Cool. We're working through this process of getting through it. Then from there, it's like, well, where was our ability for that? We're not going to change our ability before the next event, but it's good just to know, like, dude, next year we really got to work on legless rope climbs. Like that's a really cool thing. Just like I said it out loud. Cool. We don't need to dive down this. We're not going to go, we'll do rope climbs on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And one day we'll do them in an EMOM. It's not that. It's just like we walk through the strategy. Where's our ability? And the A is, the A was ability, and the E is execution. So how do we execute? What was our effort? Execution effort. So did we bring our very best selves? Were we ultimately competitive? Did we sprint through the finish line? Even though we were in the back of the pack, did we compete like we were in the front of the pack? So that's the way we brought a process to the ability to be able to turn the page. Because if you just go, hey, we got to let this one go and get to the next one, you get stuck because you haven't done the necessary work to turn the page. It's kind of like if you lose a loved one, there's a reason that they have wakes, funerals, that they have this process for you to get through this thing so you can move on with your life. If you don't go through those processes, you don't have the necessary period or exercises in place to allow you to bring your best self to the next endeavor.
Have a plan for when adversity strikes. I love it. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 says, there's a lot of noise out there. Ignore it.
Yeah. So this is like, again, whether it's life or anything else, like there's going to be naysayers. And if it's not even it's not about the haters. It's not that. Noise could be anything. Noise could be your family telling you something that they heard from, another competitor. It could be your sponsors, you're asking you to do something on social during the week of the games. It could be that voice in your head that's being a critic. There's a lot of noise. There's so much noise. Mental toughness is the ability to stay focused. That's all. That's all it is. At this level, we know what we're after. Are we focusing on the things that are going to move us forward, or are we getting distracted? And those distractions come in so many different ways, but generally it ends up being noise. Just this other stuff that's clouding and distracting us away from our mission. We need to do everything we can to ignore the noise and stay focused on the task at hand.
I want to take it one step deeper, if you don't mind. It's a little bit personal, Ben, but your Instagram page is one of my favorites. Anytime you post something, it comes up first on my feed. I'm very in tune with what you're posting. And I don't know how much you know this, Ben, but last night as I'm preparing for the show, I'm looking through some of your stuff and everything. It already has double hearts because I like everything you put out. But I look through some of the comments, Ben, and I'm shocked. I'm utterly shocked at how many people disagree, throw out some hate on some brilliant posts. I mean, some stuff that's really great about mindset, living a great. I'm blown away because to me, I'm like, I agree with everything you put out. I'm curious, man, from a personal standpoint, we're talking about there's a lot of noise, ignore it. How do you ignore that noise when it's Instagram and it's comments? Talk to me about the personal side of ignoring the noise.
Yeah. So this is the first I've heard of that. So literally it's noise. It's a distraction. And I learned really early on that if I read a negative post, it distracted me away from the next post I was making. I would be thinking about that dude in his mom's basement, with the armchair critic going like, yeah, I know, but he's never, ever worked with an elite athlete. He's never, been at the echelon of athletics. So like, why would I even give it a second glance? But I also know my own ego that like, if I listen to that, it's a real battle for me to try to reel myself back in. Way better to just block it out. So, if we're saying that mental toughness is the ability to withstand distractions, stay focused on the task at hand, with our athletes, we do that. There's two things we need to do. We need to do that in a physical domain, and we need to do that in a mental domain. So we have our athletes do is during the warm-up process, whenever they're not competing on the floor, we physically try to remove all the distractions away. They remove Instagram from their phones. That's a major distraction. They put big headphones on so that people don't come up to them, whether it's other competitors, other coaches, or anyone else, and say, hey, what do you think of it? Because this is on. This lets people know, like, hey, I'm in my world. We have them put on hooded sweatshirts. So they literally have more of a tunnel vision, and they don't get distracted by seeing what someone else is doing, warming up and going, maybe I should be doing that. We're physically creating an environment of fewer distractions. Me not going through and sifting through my comments is one of the ways that I do that. If we are able to create the physical ones, less ones come in that we have to work through. So it's kind of, we're doing everything we can to control our external environment. Sometimes those things poke through. Sometimes a friend goes, hey, did you see this comment that this person put on your thing? And it sneaks through. Well, once it sneaks through, then it's my job to work on it internally. Something has breached the gates, and now it's my job to work through that internally. And the way to do that is to stay centered. Staying centered, you're going to get knocked a little bit, but you just don't want to get knocked so far. If we're trying to walk from point A to point B down a narrow hallway, the most effective way to do that is not to bang into walls. The least effective way to do that is to bang through the walls. We don't stay centered. So if we don't let these vibrations come in, much easier to walk down that hallway in a straight line. But every now and then, something's going to get through. It's going to knock us a little bit. We might bang against a wall. That's fine. Don't go through the wall. Try to pull yourself back to center. And if we do that, we'll get to where we want to be faster than if we were to do anything otherwise.
I love that. Number 3, the right mindset won't make you win, but it can make you lose.
Yeah. So mindset's important, but you're not going to win the CrossFit Games by being a stoic or a monk. But you could be a phenomenal, and I've seen it, you could be a phenomenal athlete and completely underperform because of your mindset. So it's basically the way that mindset works in terms of a performance enhancement or a performance detriment is it could probably give you an extra, and people have been in this, and when you're in a flow state, you in a creative thing, doing this, you've been in flow states in conversations. Flow states are not as rare as people think they are. In other parlance, it's called being in the zone but if you are in a flow state, your performance, to put some abstruse numbers to this thing, you might be able to increase your performance 25%, which is astronomical, right? It's otherworldly to be able to, at this level, bring up your performance by 25%, but it, like when you're kind of just like doing your thing, or you're like grooving, it's like just your best is pouring out of you, whether it's doing a creative work, like a podcast, public speaking, writing an article, or doing a workout, athletics, or extreme sports, whatever it might be. That might give you a 25% performance boost, but the wrong mindset could knock you down 50%. It's exponential. You cannot even come close to performing to your otherwise norm if you have the wrong mindset. It will just destroy you. And the example there is, instead of, imagine doing any of those endeavors, but the critic inside your head is just screaming at you. You're giving public speaking, and you're in your head, they're going, they don't even understand what you're saying. They have no idea that they can't stand you. You're making no sense. Like, with that mindset, trying to give a high level, like a TED talk or something, you're going to stumble on your own words. You're going to get lost in the flow of what you're trying to create. And you're going to come up so far away from your otherwise potential performance.
I would love to hear a story. You said the right mindset, and I think we all have this idea in our head of maybe what it looks like, but to put it, to get more color to it, Ben, whether it's Katrin, Chris, Kolb, Matt, at some point, could you give a story about what is the right mindset? Where have you seen the right mindset in your building?
Yeah. So, I'll come back so the opposite mindset is distracted.
Mm-hmm.
You have lost focus on the things that you're trying to accomplish. And the way to me most productive, it's overused now, but like you've lost the ability to be in the present and you are now focused on the future, which creates levels of anxiety and stress because you're second guessing yourself based off of the outcomes. You're focused on the results and the outcomes instead of actually what's happening now. And this is really what it comes down to is whether you are judgmental or not. The right mindset is not judgment. It's open-minded, present-focused with non-judgment. Those are three characteristics of the right mindset. So open-minded, hey, whatever happens, happens. Like this is the thing, like this, I'm accepting reality and yep, we're going out to do Murph and it's 110 degrees out. Maybe I'll have a little bit more electrolytes, like that type of thing. Not like, oh my God, this can be terrible. And I've never done anything this hard in this heat before. And what if these other people have been training harder than I have? And I didn't, that's open-minded, present focused with non-judgment. And non-judgment is the biggest of those three.
It reminds me, you and I are both Ted Lasso fans, and that scene where he quotes Walt Whitman, "Be curious, not judgmental." I don't know if you know much about this podcast, but the theme.
I love it.
The theme is stay curious. And when you're curious, I say be curious, not furious, because you can't be both at the same time. So having that curiosity mindset, what can I get out of this? What can I learn from this? Having that curiosity without judgment, I think is a huge distinction for people.
Love that. The hack that I've used with people is say, I wonder. The same things, but just say, instead of like, you just go like, I wonder if, like, I wonder if, instead of like, oh no, this, like, I wonder if I can accomplish this. I wonder if that sense of wonder brings a sense of awe, brings a sense of excitement instead of judgment, which is the opposite of all those things. Judgment is pass fail. There is no pass fail in athletics. I know that there are wins and losses, but not in the moment. There is no in the moment pass or fails. Russell Wilson had a 0.0 QB rating in the NFC Championship. He threw more passes to the other team than he did to his own team. He had 0 completions and 3 interceptions in the first half of the NFC Championship game. Somebody that's judgmental would go, he failed. He is not. He's very good. He doesn't call it, he calls it neutral mindset, which is different verbiage, different terminology. It doesn't matter what the semantics are of it. It's the same thing. He's accepting the reality of which it is. He's curious and he goes, I wonder what I can do in the second half. I wonder if I can lead this team back. And guess what happened? He brought the team back, had a phenomenal second half, brought the team to overtime and drove the team down in overtime and won the game. It's like, that's awesome. I wonder, yeah, this happened. This happened, but I wonder.
I'm gonna steal that from you, Ben. I love it. All right, number 4. Different things work differently for different people. I'm curious on this one, Ben. What's something that, if you have a story or something, what's something that worked for one of your athletes, your high level athletes, that didn't work for another? Do you have something that you'd be able to kind of pull back the curtain and tell us that what's an example of this?
Yeah. So Katrin, when I worked with Katrin, just want to be told what to do. Now, she wanted the why behind everything, but when she walked in the morning, we had a conversation. How you feeling today? She would tell me how she's feeling. Of course, every athlete, just like if you ask anyone how your nutrition is, it's pretty good. They always say pretty good. So it was always, you're not allowed to say pretty good. How you doing? Don't tell me pretty good. And then we had to get to the point where we were able to systemize it more, in terms of energy, 1 to 10, excitement to train, 1 to 10, soreness, 1 to 10, and some things like that. So we got a little bit more clarity on it. But Katrin, we just want to be like, hey, here's what we're doing today. Cole needed to co-create together. Cole needed to take ownership of his programming. So Cole would do the opposite. I would lay out the template with Cole early on in the season in different phases of the season. And I would go, hey, this is the things we want to attack. These are the things we want to do. he would go and build out his week, and then we would review the week, and I go, hey, maybe we'll do a little bit more of this or that. So different strokes, different folks, the principles remain the same, but the way you get to the end point needs to be specific to the individuals.
I'm excited to get to number 5 because I don't think it gets talked about enough, and I'd really like to jam on this for a little while. Number 5 is a big one. Winning takes obsession. Obsession might not be healthy. Let's jam on this for a minute. Why does this not get talked about enough, and why did you put this on your list?
Okay, because I've seen what obsession looks like, particularly working with Katrin and Matt. Like obsession, obsession. So we can go into specifics, but they've been talked about a lot, and people in the space probably know a lot of the stories about what these guys did to get to the center of the podium. But it was crazy to watch, awesome to watch, a privilege to watch. Having said that, if you want health, happiness, fulfillment, it doesn't come on the other side of ultimate success. Now, I wrote this, there's a point of this later on as well. But obsession can strip away a lot of other things in your life. Like, and Kobe Bryant is probably the best he's probably the best to talk about this. Kobe Bryant said, I'm not the best dad. I'm not the best husband. And because of that, you can't beat me. Because while you're even thinking about those things, I'm on the court training to beat you. And if you have those things in your mind at all, you can't beat me. And what these guys all need, every athlete that wants to win needs a competitive advantage. And that competitive advantage can come in a lot of different ways. It can come in as a physical trait. I'm faster than you. I'm stronger than you. I'm more explosive than you. I can read the opponent better than you. But I really don't believe that there is a better competitive trait than knowing you have outworked your opponent. I've done more than you. Kobe did it. Tom Brady did it. Michael Jordan did, to knowing that I've outworked you, because it carries over to every single aspect of the competitive game. Whereas the other ones, they only show up sometimes. Trying to win the US Open in tennis, if you have, your competitive advantage is your first serve, okay, and it's deuce, with the match on the line, and your first serve goes out, there goes your competitive advantage. So, but the one that I've outworked you, which is obsession, it's there at all times. So you always feel like you have a competitive advantage. But it's the opposite. And Katrin and I talked about this all the time during her championship years. It's all we just at nauseum talked about, there is no balance. There is no balance. She moved away from her family, who she loves more than anything else in the world. She moved across the world to live in my basement, and it was a 24/7 thing of just us pushing this, pushing this at all times. Every conversation was about athletic excellence. Everything, every dinner table conversation, every car ride to and from the gym, every lunch, every meal, every time we were warming up and warming down, every break in every session, it was nonstop. There was nothing. We were both so hungry, so passionate, loved this thing so much. It was easy for us. And I use that word on purpose, not simple. It was easy for us to be obsessed. I had yet to start the second half of my family, and we are growing this thing together. It was an obsession, and obsession breeds results, but results are very specific and don't have carryover to other areas of your life, like health, balance, fulfillment, getting to, a great example of this is there's a Netflix documentary called Cavendish, who's arguably the second or third most successful cyclist of all time. You'd probably say Lance Armstrong was number one, big asterisk next to him. Freddie Merckx was number two, because he won the most stages at the Tour de France, and winning a stage like creates your career, just like winning one stage. Well, Cavendish tied Merckx's record. But the whole thing about him is this obsession to be the best cyclist he can. And I mean, the guy's a mess. I mean, he is a complete mess because of this obsession. So not to say that Matt or Kat or the other athletes I've worked with are messes. They're incredible human beings, but that's why I said it might not be healthy.
So, okay, this is heavy. So as a coach, you got somebody who wants to be world best, wants to be a champion, whatever sport. How do you have this conversation with them that, look, this season of your life might not be very healthy for you, and this is not going to be your entire life, Ben, but for the next, I don't know, however long you're going to do this for 5 years, this isn't going to be a healthy road to go down, but this is what it takes. How does that conversation look? And as the coach, how do you go through it knowing that, God, there's probably nights where you're at home going, man, this is not healthy for X, Y, or Z.
I don't have those conversations anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons I'm not doing this anymore. As I've evolved, and I don't mean become better, but changed, as I've changed and my pursuits, passions, and values have changed, I can't authentically have those conversations. If they're striving with everything, if they're obsessed with this thing, but I don't believe it's the long-term best play for overall fulfillment and health, how can I latch myself to that wagon? That's why I've chosen not to.
Interesting. I just had a conversation with Brad Stolberg. He just came out with a book called the Master of Change, and he talked a lot about identity. And I think identity really ties into this. And he painted such a great picture for me. He said that we should all aim to have an identity that's like a really big house. And in these houses, we all have these different rooms, right? So it could be the athlete room, the dad room, the entrepreneur. We have all these different rooms. And when one room is under construction or not working, we can easily go into another room. And we don't just have a one room house. And sometimes I think what happens is when we talk about obsession is some athletes, they have a house with just one room. And then when an injury happens, Ben, or they don't make the games, their house falls apart and life falls apart in front of them because there's no separation in identity. Before we move on to 6, talk to me about, where does identity fit in? What are your thoughts when you hear something like that?
Yeah, I think identities are really, it's sort of a double-edged sword conversation, because identity can be one of the most powerful things to help move you in a certain direction. If you're able to say, I'm the type of person that ... we have such confirmation bias as human beings. You're probably going to be the type of person that ... I'm the type of person that doesn't hit the snooze alarm. I'm the type of person that works out 6 days a week. I'm the type of person that goes to parties but doesn't drink alcohol. I'm the type of person that has hard conversations with my coworkers. I'm the type of person that doesn't miss my kids' soccer games. I'm the type of person that when you say those things, you're very, very likely going to be those things. But when you start to create identity around roles, I think that's a very dangerous situation, because roles change. As you just said, I'm an athlete. Well, okay, until you're not. Like, I'm a dad. Okay, until your only child dies in a rock climbing accident, which happened to my wife's cousin, and the parents were shattered. They couldn't overcome it because that was their role. They thought that was their sole purpose in life. I am a successful entrepreneur, until you're not, right? Until you either retire, and then what are you? Who are you? So I prefer to build identity instead of around roles, around character traits. I am patient. I am disciplined. I am centered. I have perspective. I am caring. I am committed. I am curious. Like, those things are who you actually are, and they don't change with life circumstances. If you're in, how many athletes doing, I mean, the stories are all over the place. There's a documentary about it on Netflix about these Olympians who spend their entire youth trying to chase, this Olympic dream, hit it or don't, come back, and then they're like, they have not, their lives are basically, the punchline is most of them become substance abusers because they're that role of I am this is gone, and they don't know who or what they are after that. So I think it's much better, like, if you want to be that elite athlete, it's not I am an elite athlete. It's what are the character traits that make you an elite athlete? And those character traits are who you are, and those can morph and change throughout life as well. I don't want you to be the person at 14 that you are at 44. That's ridiculous. And I don't want you to be at 44, the person you are at 74. Like, you want to grow and evolve. But though that's very different than moving through these phases or these roles of life.
I love that. Thanks for diving deep on that. I knew I wanted to spend more time on that. Listeners, if you didn't catch that, character traits over roles. That's powerful stuff. Ben, let's go to 6. It's not going to be perfect. Do what you can with what you have. This is as universal as it gets.
So we have a saying, which is, I think it was from, I'm going to attribute to Eleanor Roosevelt, but I don't know if it's right. It might be Theodore Roosevelt, but it's like, do what you can with what you have where you are. That's one of the most powerful quotes that I think is, if everyone was able to just always fall back or always have that as a North Star at all times, we have this idea, we have these expectations of what life is supposed to be like, the way it's supposed to unfold for us. And life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, could care less about that expectation. You're going to have adversity. And it's such an overused statement right now. I'm trying to change the word adversity because you're going to have challenges. Challenges are coming. Challenges are unavoidable. So in the CrossFit Games, this is, it's so awesome and amazing because we might have practiced, they might have announced an event and we might have practiced it, but we practiced it in a certain environment. Well, now this event is showing up on day 4 after you've done 12 events and you just finished an excruciating event in 95 degrees 35 minutes ago. For you to go like get all bummed out because you didn't execute this perfectly like you did in practice it's honestly, it's craziness. But this is where humans go. They're like, oh my God, I did so much better in practice. This wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. And this idea of expectations, I'm a big believer in vision, but vision is big and blurry. It's a North Star because that North Star is so far away that if you get sent a mile or 2 off track, the analogy of a plane takes off from Boston trying to land in San Francisco. When it's on its way to San Francisco, it might be 5 miles off course. And even being 5 miles off course, by the time it gets to San Francisco, it's lost 0 time. It's still going to land at the same time that it otherwise would, because it's just like, this is what happens. It's no such thing as perfection. It does not exist. There is no perfection. Yes, we all want that to be the case. Instead of this is the perfectionism that's riddling, the youth right now. It's like, because everyone sees everyone else's highlights all the time. They're like, well, I'm not matching up to that. So their belief in themselves gets diminished because it's failing to meet the expectations that they have of what norm is. And that's not the case. Just if every single time we got rid of that judgment, again, back to judgment, if we got rid of that judgment and really just did everything we can with what we had at that moment, like that. So yeah, like you didn't get to fill in the blank, but now you are fill in the blank. Can you give it your best? That's what we're saying. Like you're late for a meeting. You missed that red light. You're going to be 35 seconds later than you thought you were. Can you give your best still to this moment? Can you use this moment to plan for the meeting even more instead of spinning in your head the story that you think is going to play out when you walk in the door 9 minutes late to the meeting? Instead, can you prepare to get like every single moment? Can you bring your best self to it? Not where are you relative to your expectations? Just give your best effort now.
Well said. Let's go to number 7. Everyone is working hard. Few are dialed in. Everyone is working hard. Few are dialed in. I think it begs to ask right away, Ben, what's the difference between working hard and being dialed in?
So it's I've talked about, this has kind of popped up before, but, I've had conversations I have conversations with my athletes. So everybody at the CrossFit Games, everyone is doing the Olympic lifts, doing the slow lifts, doing the rowing intervals, doing Metcons. Everyone is working hard. Everyone's working hard. If you go to a Division I school, everyone's going to work hard. If you move through the Division I school and you make it into the pros, everyone's going to work hard. But that doesn't mean they're dialed in. Dialed in means that they're doing everything that they can. Working hard is the price of admission to becoming elite. Like, nobody makes the CrossFit Games without working hard. Nobody does. So if that's the case, what's the difference between the people that make the games and the people that win it? Well, the people that win it are dialed in. It goes back to that thing about obsession. They're dialed. They're dialed in. They know exactly how much they're eating. They know exactly what they're supposed to be doing for a warm-up. They know exactly how much they're supposed to be sleeping. If they're watching TV, it's on purpose because they're trying to use this time to lower their brain waves to allow them to get out of a stress. Like, it's all like, it's dialed. They're reading the right things. They're not just reading it. They're taking notes and they're journaling and they're having the conversations with the sports psychologist, and and people go like, no, I'm doing those things. Not like the people that are winning. I'm telling you, like, the level that they're dialed in is incredible. You watch, like, Tom Brady back in his, like, he was getting professional body work done twice a day. So an hour in the morning and an hour at night. Like, how often are you getting body work done? And people, because they're doing it once a week, they go, no, I get body work done. Well, he's getting it done 14 times a week. You're getting it done once. So talk about 10x. He's 14x just in that one category. Like, okay, when you are doing your foods, like, where are you sourcing your foods from? Are you going to the supermarket? Do you know where they're getting their foods from? Like, oh, there's another level to that? Yes, there is. Okay. In terms of your supplements, people go, yep, I do protein and I do my carbs and I take some beta alanine. Okay. Have you done the blood tests? Have you worked with a functional medicine person? Have you gotten your DNA mapped? Have you done stool samples to figure out your gut microbiome? Like, dialed in. Okay, I make sure that I drink water. Okay. Have you done the sweat tests? Do you know your sweat rate and your sweat concentration? If you're taking electrolytes, are you taking them in the form of like Noon tablets, or are you taking in the specific amount for what you're losing every single time? We've done all these things. Dialed in. It's a totally different level.
Man, I love dialed in. That's so cool. There's just so many levels that people don't even think about. I remember Brent Fikowski, whether it was a documentary or a podcast, he talked about something where when rookies are there, he told a story about at one of the games where one of the rookies, in between events, he was kind of looking around for food at like the local vendors. And then another one pulled out all his food out of this cooler and had everything dialed in. Each Ziploc had the time of day to eat it. And he goes, right from there, I knew which one of these rookies was going to make it to day 3. And so happens the story is that's the one that made it. And it was just an eye test. It was on the first day. So I think that's a great example of what dialed in.
Like, our athletes, some athletes travel with a pillow because they've heard of David Blandsfield, who worked with, British cycling, and James Clear wrote about this in Atomic Habits and, the aggregation of marginal gains. The athletes that are dialed in have a mattress shipped to the hotel. They take the hotel mattress, throw it up against the wall, and they know what mattress they're sleeping on during the competitive event. Like dialed in.
Dialed in. Let's go to the next one. Number 8. Actions speak louder than words. I have a quote that I like to say with my athletes and coaching mental performance, that ACE, acting or action, changes everything. Talk about why this is so pivotal for you. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, I love that. I can't hear what you're saying because your actions are speaking so loudly. There's plenty of people that just talk a good game. Like the last one we were just talking in, I'm dialed in. I'm doing everything I can. People like, I've heard it before. Like people are like, I just can't get any leaner. This is my body weight. It's like, and like I'm doing everything I can to get leaner. Well, no, you're not. You're not. Like, as a coach, this is the role. It's to show people the gap between where you want to be and the actions that you're doing right now, and the differences that you need to do to get to where you want to be. And what happens a lot is people talk a lot about wanting to be a certain place, but they're just talking. They don't actually want to do that. I want to have a six pack. I want to have a six pack. Like this summer, I'm going to be ripped and I'm going to be shredded. I'm going to have a six pack. They talk about that, but their actions don't back it up at all. They still snooze. They still have desserts. They're still drinking alcohol. They're still not sleeping, and they're not spending the time in the gym or in the kitchen to make it happen. Like, actions speak louder than words. Don't tell me. Show me. I don't want to, you don't have to tell me. The right leaders and the right people don't have to say it. They show it.
One of my favorite quotes on this is, your thoughts determine what you want. Your actions determine what you get.
Like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Number 9. You have to be prepared enough for things to go wrong and still be okay. We talked about this a little bit before, but you have to be prepared enough for when things go wrong and still be okay. What does that mean?
Okay, so this first popped up really early in my career when I was training Chris Spieler. It was a hard thing because this is early on in the sport, and Chris was an icon. If you were around then, he was probably the fan favorite. There were people that were winning the games. OPT won the inaugural, and then it was Kalipa, but it was before Kalipa was Kalipa, and there was other people there, Josh Bridges, but Spiel was like this mythical figure. He was like the David versus all these Goliaths. And we're at the Southwest regional event for qualifying for the games. And it was the first time that a heavy dumbbell showed up. It was heavy dumbbell snatches. And I think it was 100-pound dumbbell. And Spiel at the time weighed 131 pounds. Sometimes he competed underneath 130 pounds. And he was getting no reps because as he was bringing the dumbbell down, they had this crazy standard that it had to be placed down with no bouncing, no even one head, then the other head. And he was getting no reps. And, his judge would no rep him. And then Chris would, because he was moving, would go to the other side. And because he didn't repeat the same side, he would get no reps on that one. And basically he was doing double the work for zero the credit. And it kept him from going to the games. And, afterwards, that's the thing that you want to center on. It's like this, and the judge was wrong. It was really the judge was not making the right calls. And had he had a more seasoned veteran judge, he would have been okay enough to still make it. He missed by, a spot and just a few points. And you go damn it, it was the judge and this and that. But then you zoom out a little bit. Everyone has those things going on. Everyone has those pieces of adversity. And that year, Matt Chan was also there. And Matt Chan was getting no rep for in the deadlift box jump workout. And he was getting no rep for his deadlifts. And he had to do something 26 deadlifts instead of 21 in the first round. He had to do 19 deadlifts instead of 15, which is just crazy when it was a 315-pound deadlift. Back then, that would be like a 405 deadlift now. And Matt was good enough to have that adversity happen and still make it through. You can't like wish and want and hope for perfection or even like smooth sailing. You got to be so good that even with a hiccup, even with a big mistake, you're still going to be able to come out on top. And the best of the best do this. Patrick Mahomes throws interceptions. Patrick Mahomes takes sacks, but he's so good that he can overcome those things. I love there's this Netflix series called, I obviously watched a lot of like the sports documentary stuff as a coach. It's fascinating to see. Yeah. So there's a Netflix documentary called Quarterback, and they talk about in it, he throws interception and he goes, "Oh yeah, you want to play me like that?" He gets excited. Like, "You want to play me like that? I know now, like if you're going to creep up your safeties, I'm going over the top of you, man." It's like, it'd be so like, you got to be so good. So like when Rich Froning was making his runs, Rich, so he walked on the triple threes the first time it showed up, but he was so good, he could overcome those things. When Matt was winning, there would be events that Matt, it's hard to remember, but there'd be events that Matt didn't do as well as expected, but he was so good, or got a bad call here or there, and he was so good that he could overcome those things. That's the deal, is you got to be so good, whether it's like at your sales presentation, that if somebody asks you the question you hadn't prepared for, you're so good that you can overcome those things. You have you're going to your sales presentation and your PowerPoint doesn't work. You're so good that you can overcome those things in the moment.
Let me ask a follow-up there, just to get tactile here. So we're both big believers in growth mindset, obviously, that this is a trainable skill to be able to respond and still be okay. How would you recommend for the listener out there that goes, "Man, that sounds great to be like Mahomes and have this response"? Ben, how do I practice that? What does that look like? I'm not good at it yet, but I think I can train at it. Where do I start with that? What do I do then?
It comes back. It's so fundamental, because what we need to be able to do is be non-judgmental. What happens is something goes wrong and people go, "Oop, this means that PowerPoint doesn't work. Oh, this means that this is going to be a disaster," through interception. "Oop, that means that this is going to be a disaster." But you can't just have that show up in the moment. You have to practice that way. You have to train that way. So we need to purposely set people up to not be, it's the way Kobe talks about it. Like, Deion Sanders talking about it now, like practice should be so hard, so challenging that you get the reps in practice mentally. You get these mental reps. You get to work through the challenge in practice and go, "Yep, that didn't go the way I wanted to. Okay, not only how do I fix this, how do we run the right route? How do we have the switch our coverage? How do we fix our execution and our strategy? But how do we work through this framework, this mental framework, to make sure that we don't get spun in this sewer cycle of this victim mindset?"
Love it. Let's go on number 10. This is hung up in our gym. Better people make better athletes. Better people make better athletes. You've mentioned this a lot, but talk to me about why it's so important, Ben. Why is it on posters, and why do you believe this so much?
Yeah, it's kind of like it surmises what we talked about so far, which is it's about character. And when I say better people, I'm not talking like people that give to charity and, roam the streets at 5 o'clock looking for old ladies to walk across the street and have really good table manners. That can certainly be a part of it. But what I really mean by better people is people with better character traits. If you don't get rattled, if you're curious, not judgmental, if you have stronger discipline, if you are calm, you're going to be a better athlete. Here's the interesting thing that I've added to that in recent years. Better people make better athletes, but better athletes make better people, because it's bi-directional. As you become a better athlete, you learn these traits. That's why athletics is so amazing. The lessons learned in the gym echo outside the walls. The reason for the gym, if you are an elite athlete, is to prepare for your sport. The reason for the gym, if you're not an elite athlete, is to prepare for life. Both so you have the physical capabilities to overcome any challenge that are presented to you, like moving a couch, like decrepitude and disease, like being able to do the last run while you're heli skiing with your buddies. Like that's what it, but also I believe that the greatest adaptation in training happens between the ears. And I believe it so much that I actually believe hard, and this would be hard. I don't mean going to the gym, breaking out People magazine and sitting on the recumbent bike for 40 minutes. I don't mean that. I mean doing cleans and rowing intervals and running and burpees and box jumps and presses and like horsepower driven programming. Doing that consistently is as good, or I believe a more potentially powerful way to grow your mind than any of the other traditional ways, which are journaling, psychology, pharmacology, reading scripture, nature, stillness, meditation, church. I believe that hard physical training will improve your mindset as well as any of those other things.
Mic drop. I'm going to leave it there. That's great. We got 5 more here. This has been a great list. So 15 lessons in 15 years of coaching CrossFit Games athletes. Number 11, be authentically you at all times. I'm curious, Ben, is there a story that goes with this, or did you learn this the hard way? Why does this hit so hard with you?
Yeah, this is this is me as a coach, not necessarily the athlete. This is yeah, there's for sure there's times I haven't been authentically me, that I'm trying to be somebody I think the athletes think I should be, that I'm trying to play the role of coach instead of actually being myself. And I'm really, really far from perfect. And there's been lots of times that I wish that I look back and go, if I had just really been delivered the thing that was in my gut at that moment, this probably would have ended up in a better place. And I think everyone talks about this all the time, that, the best thing you can do is be the best version of you. You can use inspiration, but don't try imitation. It does not work. And there's times that I've looked to my role models, particularly early on, when I know where this stems from. I never had a good coach growing up. I have never been an elite athlete. I was never on a high level team. I was an average athlete on average teams, and probably what made me an okay CrossFitter as well, is I was just kind of okay at everything. And because of that, I never had the experience. I didn't know what it looked like. So I would just try to grab from these role models that I looked to, like John Wooden and Belichick and Brad Stevens and these other coaches. There's a rowing coach from Harvard that, these other coaches, I would go those methods work for those guys. I'm just going to try and pull them into my repertoire. And some of those times I got away from actually who I was and who I should have been. And if I was to go back, this would be my suggestion to myself, was just authentically, without second guessing at all, do what's in your gut. Be you. Be the biggest, best you can be.
Tough question here, but Ben, how do you know, for the coaches out there listening, how do you know if you've gotten away from you? How do you know if you're not being authentically you? What's the awareness, or what's the kind of the finding of, man, you know what, maybe I'm getting called out here? How do you know?
And you won't know. It's like there is no binary. It's not X's and O's. It's not pass fail. It's not I'm away or I am myself. It's always a gazillion shades of gray. And that's what makes this very, very difficult. And you won't know until hindsight. And maybe you won't know until hindsight, when it's all said and done and it's over. And you have the ability to look back on the past 15 years and go, where could I have leaned into some other areas with greater power, execution, vitality, energy. And that's one of those places that I've had the ability to kind of, let's sit back with perspective now and go, yeah, that's probably, and I still don't know. I don't know that that's the case. And maybe I was being authentically me for me at that time. But looking back, I also believe that there was, I believe that there was some misses.
Where does feedback fit into this list? You know, as a coach and somebody that's working with elite athletes, and you're surrounded by the best, Ben, at what point in your life did you kind of get around the idea of asking for feedback, and did that help you stay authentic? And what's the advice on asking for feedback? Is it something you struggled with? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I think that it's such a great question, because that's the role of a coach, is to give feedback and constructive um, advice that's going to help move the person forward. And what's challenging in that situation is, in most situations, head coaches don't have that coming to them. You have to create, it's difficult, in our sport where we don't have a professional framework. We're not, English Premier League soccer. We're not NFL football. We're not even like D1 lacrosse. So we don't have an athletic director. We don't have a host of assistant coaches. It's you with a couple athletes. And the hope, the goal is to be able to create a system of trust where that is happening bi-directionally. But I think that feedback is so, the best place I've gotten with it is like me and my business. I'm better at than I probably was with coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably another thing I could have done better as a coach, is asked more for the feedback. I say that now, but like, we talked so much, in the, I think about like with Katrin and Cole and the people I got really, really close to. But particularly, I think I could have created better framework and systems for the people I worked with remotely that I didn't work for as long with, because one of my weaknesses, one of my shortcomings, is maintaining relationships that aren't in my face. So I have a hard time, like, I have to, like, calling my parents. I have to, like, I had to systemize that, like, make sure you call your mom and your dad once a week, like, and I have to like check a box to make sure that would happen, because for me, I'm very much like, if it's out of sight, it can be out of mind. And that was one of the challenges I had with working with remote athletes, was I wanted to, if there was here, it was like all in, easy, like every single conversation. Katrin's having dinner with us, lunch, two rides to and from the gym. It was nonstop all the time. I think that it's really hard to do that in a remote environment,
Yeah.
where it's not organic. It would have to be like systemized, and I don't think I create the systems for that.
I think that was a really interesting point there, Ben, where you said that as coaches, we spend a large majority of our day giving feedback, giving feedback, giving feedback. And maybe it's a little bit, I don't know if uncomfortable is the word or unique, but oftentimes it doesn't get reciprocated. It's just not normal. So we spend our
Yeah.
time giving, giving, giving. I think a really great lesson here is, if we're going to add a number 16, is maybe be okay asking for feedback. I'm not sure if it's on your list or not, but we give feedback, maybe start asking for more feedback. It could be something that, who knows, could save you some lessons, could save you some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Let's go to the next one here. Talking about communication. Number, what are we on here? Number 12. A big part of coaching is telling people what they don't want to hear. Can you go deeper on that?
That's basically what we're just talking about,
Yeah.
is there's this gap. There's a gap between people, where people want to be and where they are. And the role of the coach is to bring that to light, let them know about it, explain it to them, and then help them work through that, support, guide, push them to be that person, to be that athlete, to follow that process. And that's you know, that's what we're just talking about. It's about the ability to give constructive feedback. And, I think that's one of the things that a lot of coaches, that like normal class coaches in our space, have a hard time doing, because most coaches, we're actually just working out side by side with the people that they're now coaching a few
Mm,
months ago. And the
mm,
owner came, or the head coach came over and was like, "Hey, would you like to be a coach?" And like, "Yeah, that'd be awesome. Go to their level one, cool level one." And then 2 months later, they're coaching that person. They're like, how do I give this person feedback? It's just easier not to. It's so much easier to go like, good job, Johnny. Go get it. Like, don't put it down, and be a cheerleader. And there's different levels to becoming a coach. And that first level is a cheerleader, because it's the easiest thing to do. After the cheerleader becomes the tactician, and the tactician is the one that can see and correct. It can see the faults of movement, but that's kind of where it begins and ends. It's like, hey, Johnny, I need you to drive your knees out. Hey, Johnny, I need you to have a vertical torso. Hey, Johnny, I need you to X, Y, and Z. The trainer is the one that can actually root the cause, though. So it's the next level. So it goes cheerleader, tactician, trainer. And the trainer goes, oh, the reason that their knees are caving, or I should say, the reason that their torso is coming forward on that push press is not because they're not listening to me. It's because they have no ankle mobility. And because they have no ankle mobility, when they dip, there's an inverse relationship between shin angle and torso angle. Because their shins can't go forward, their torso must. So the appropriate cue is not for that athlete chest up. The appropriate cue is knees out, because knees out creates the room for the hips to dip, drive up and down without requiring ankle mobility. And then what we're going to do is work with that athlete outside the class on ankle mobility. So it's not just like this, like, I see a fault, I give a cue. They're able to root what the actual issue is and work through that. That's a trainer. But what a coach does is a coach takes into account the human being. And a coach knows how this athlete likes to be coached. They take into consideration, do they want to hear their name yelled across the room? Like if I'm in the front of the room and I go, DJ, knees out, does that make you cringe or does that fire you up? It's knowing that DJ normally holds a 1250 on the row. And in round one, he's opening up at a 1475, going over to that athlete and going, DJ, choke it down a little bit. You're a little bit excited. Let's come out 1250, man. 1250, 1250. That's the coach. The coach knows the athlete. And that's what we always be aspiring to. But that also dictates how comfortable you are giving levels of actionable feedback to the athletes.
Phenomenal. What's the advice to the more inexperienced coach that wants to get better at giving feedback, but they're a little bit nervous about, I don't want to piss them off and I don't want them to think this, but I'm trying to be the coach.
Yep.
What's the step? Tell me what's the step for the coach to get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Yeah, it's not what you think it is. It's not like confidence. It's not just do it. It's not a delivery mechanism. It's you're insecure. The coach is insecure. And probably not for a bad reason. You're probably insecure because at your heart of hearts, you don't know this well enough. So the workaround there is to improve your knowledge, is to improve and kind of going right through it. Do you really have the ability to see and correct? Do you really have the ability to properly cue the person? If the person doesn't make the right correction with cue A, do you have cue B and C in your pocket ready to rock and roll? From there, can you root the cause? If someone's running and they're heel striking, can you see that? Then do you have the right cues to fix it? Then do you understand why they're heel striking as opposed to just heel striking? Because then you can work through more. And so on and so on. So it's really working through. I'm root causing the levels of people that why they are hesitant to give feedback. It's because they're insecure. And then we root that. Why are they insecure? Because they don't have the right knowledge base to actually do it. We have to develop ourselves as coaches. It's leaning in to human movement and human psychology.
Something that when I get this question from coaches at my gym, I like to give the advice of, I'm very into being curious, obviously, as the name of the show here, being curious and asking questions. Something that works well for me in my coaching, I've been just kind of sprinkling in the last couple of years, is I'll ask them, hey, I saw something there. Can I give you some feedback? And 10 times out of 10, Ben, they always say, yeah, what do you got? And it's just an easier entry. And again, when you're in a Metcon, you're not going to be able to do that. But in a strength, hey, I saw something there. Can I give you some feedback? that
Yeah.
just kind of breaks down any awkwardness or any uncomfortability. And they're always saying, yeah, tell me. And it makes just an easier entryway. So just
Cool.
another tactic to throw on there. Start with a question, invite yourself in, and 10 times out of 10, I guarantee you they're going to say yes. Or if it's not now, hey, after class too.
Yeah,
Great.
beautiful. That kind of goes into the toolbox of improving your ability as a coach. Another one is the criticism sandwich. It opens people up. You know, DJ, that was a phenomenal lift, man. You're like only 5 pounds away from your PR, and man, you move that so smoothly. If you were able to fill in the blank, if you're able to keep your arms even longer, if you're able to keep the bar even closer, if you're able to get your elbows up even higher on the catch, I think we're going to PR today. Like, you're moving so well. And all of a sudden, that criticism sandwich of like, open them up, compliment, give the feedback, leave them feeling good is another cue to work with as well.
Love it. Let's keep going here. We're on number 13 out of 15. Success and happiness are not the same thing, but they are not opposed either.
Okay, this is like what my podcast is all about, the one that I actually do. So I think we have to determine, like, if we just kind of give loose definitions to what those two words mean, success and happiness. Most people talk about success in terms of either winning, accolades, awards, applause, or monetary success. That's what success is. Success to people is you won the Super Bowl, you were the MVP, you have 1 million followers on Instagram, you received the award and everyone applauded for you. You got an Oscar, right? Or you made $10 million. Like, it's one of those things. That's like what success usually is. And sometimes it's a multitude of those things. Happiness gets conflated with those things because when those things happen, we get a dopamine hit, which is your body's way of saying, ooh, this feels really good. Go do more of that. But by definition, it's fleeting, because what the second half of that dopamine is go do more of that. So all that you're doing is creating the flywheel that you need to go do more of that. And to get the next dopamine hit, you need to go and win the Super Bowl again. You need to win another Oscar. You need to earn another $10 million. You need to get another 1 million followers on Instagram. It doesn't create true lasting happiness, which is why I don't like the word happiness. I actually prefer the word fulfillment. So then what does create those things? And it is a singular thing that we can all aspire to, which is peace of mind. When your mind is at ease, meaning your mind isn't going like, I need to go and do those things, and I wish I hadn't done those things, you're cool, you're chill. And that's why it usually shows up immediately after you win the Super Bowl, immediately after you get the paycheck, immediately after you win the award, because your mind goes, we did it, chill out, you're cool. But then you wake up the next morning or the next week and you go, let's go do that thing again, because man, that feeling's gone. And now that's why when you ask an athlete like Tom Brady, which of his 7 Super Bowl rings is his favorite, what does he say? The next one. Right. Because he's not happy. He has to go get the next one. Which is cool for an athlete that's aspiring to become the best ever. But that's why it's not the same thing as happiness. Happiness is peace of mind. That's why monks actually reject all physical possessions. They go live in the woods wearing nothing but a robe and don't own anything, because they know that those things can actually be detriments to peace of mind. When you renounce those things, your mind can be clearer. So the cool thing that where we are in today's society, though, which is actually really neat, is those things are not at odds. You can have peace of mind and success. You don't need to renounce all physical possessions. You can have earning potential, but what we want to be able to do is recognize that these things don't end up in the same place. But because they don't end up in the same place, doesn't mean that they can't be two congruent paths that run on parallel lines. We just have to understand that happiness is not on the other side of success, But having success doesn't mean that you are diabolically opposed to happiness, the way that the monks pursue things. This is, I think, a profound realization in the way that we can approach our lives. If we realize that there is nothing wrong with achievements, there's nothing wrong with success, there's nothing wrong with popularity, there's nothing wrong with opportunity. But we're not going to use those as mechanisms to create pure fulfillment. What we're going to do is chase that pure fulfillment, that peace of mind, in congruence at the same time as that other pursuit.
That's huge, man. That's so huge. Shane Parrish over at Farnham Street, he talks a lot of, he has a great post that says something like vacations and time off of work, and he names all these things. They won't make you happy, because guess what? You have to come home at some point. All those things end at some point. The championship, standing on the top of the podium at the CrossFit Games, you're only standing on the podium for about 10 minutes. When that's over, and you've been there, you've seen people there, there's a moment in time when you're on there and it's the best feeling in the world. But there's also a moment of time when you have to step down, and now everybody else is thinking about next year. It's already in the past. So you got to be fulfilled when you're standing up on that first place, and you got to be fulfilled when you're standing on the floor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. It's a big one. Let's go to the next one. 14. Pressure is exactly what you think it is.
So pressure will crack pipes, but it can also make diamonds. So it's really, I mean, if you believe that this is the most pressure-filled moment in your whole life, your whole career rides on this thing, and that's true. It is going to be that thing. If you believe that this is such a privilege to be placed in this position to where, and you have the perspective that this actually isn't life or death, this is actually just a moment in time, and you are but a lightning bug in the night. And there's, like, in terms of the effect that this moment is going to have on the totality of existence, and that there is really no pressure. Pressure is just this made up thing, because you're just fill in the blank, trying to make a sale, trying to win a point, going to have a hard conversation. Then it's just those things. Because if you're shooting a free throw in your gym by yourself in your backyard on a Tuesday afternoon, or you're shooting a free throw to win the national championship or the world championship, it's the same thing. You're X number of feet away from the basket, and you have to shoot the ball into the basket. It's the same thing. The difference is the meaning you assign to it. And we assign a lot of meaning to a lot of things that we don't understand the purpose, meaning, or long-term results of. So for us to get caught up in what we're assigning this meaning to be, when we don't understand what that is right now, seems kind of crazy to me.
Pressure is exactly what you think it is. That's cool, man. I love that. All right, the last one, and this is the perfect one to end on. It's a game. There are more important things. Let's close down with this one, Ben.
You know, in terms of athletics, we have such a crazy opportunity to really play a game for in order to create a living, a career. That's so wild. That's amazing. Well, if you kind of bring that same philosophy to anything we're doing, you know, I own a gym and I own a online training platform. Those are just games too. They're just games. We're playing games. This life that I live, this life that I have, that I built with my family and my wife, that's also a game. This whole thing is just a game. Now, if we pull it back to athletics, how do you want to play the game? Do you want to get overwhelmed because you went down by 12 points at halftime? Do you want to freak out because a call didn't go your way? Are you going to live and die with every single bounce of every single ball? Or are you going to realize that you're playing a game? And the approach that we take to playing the game is probably going to be more impactful than the results of the game. This goes to Simon Sinek gets a lot of credit for it. He didn't create it, but he wrote a book about it. The infinite game versus the finite game. The finite game has a set of rules like football, who scores the most points in this 60-minute period will win. You know who your opponent is. You know what the rules, you know what offsides are. You know how to get first downs. A finite game. Well, life and business are also games, but they're infinite games, which we don't know what the scoreboard is. We don't know necessarily what the rules are besides morals and ethics. So why are we getting so absorbed in all of these little bounces of every single ball and thinking that they are the end all be all? Someone, you're on a cross-country flight from Boston to LA, and a 9-month-old sits next to you and starts screaming and screams for the entirety of the 7-hour flight. Well, okay, that's you playing a sport, and you're on a visiting, you're a visiting team, and the crowd's going crazy and yelling at you. And then it starts raining. And because of that, do you stop playing the game? Do you let that affect your mindset? Do you let that pull you away from your best self? That's a really weak athlete. That's what that is. It's a weak athlete that gets influenced because the crowd is booing them, or it starts raining, or it gets cold. That's the definition of a weak-minded athlete. It's a victim. It's a pessimist. It's somebody that can't compete. Life is that game too. So when that baby sits next to us on that flight, do you let your thoughts get absorbed in that? Or do you still try to compete? Meaning, play your best hand for this period of the game. That's what this thing is. And it goes both ways. I like this because it's this bi-directional thing of sport is just a game, but there's bigger things in life than this game, but also works the other way of, hey, life is just a game and we should play it like a game. And this moment that we're experiencing right now, as big and impactful and challenging as it is right now, in the scheme of things, is not that big of a thing. And once you do that, even really big things, really big challenging things. And I've been lucky enough to train a lot of people that have gone on to become Navy SEALs. In this perspective, we try to have them bring to Buds and particularly Hell Week. It's going to be so gnarly, right? It's going to be the craziest freaking thing. One of the guys FaceTimed me the moment that he finished Hell Week, and his face is all swollen and his eyes are covered up. And it's like, it was really gnarly. And I get it. It's a really, really big, really challenging thing. It's also 4 days of your life. It's 4 days. 4 days of the entirety of your whole life. It's nothing. Like, you can do anything. I don't want to say, I hate that saying, like, you can do anything for. You can do this. You can do this for this moment right now. And forget about the 4 days. Just this moment right now. Can you deal with this moment? If we have people that are trying to really lose weight and are really struggling, if you give the magnitude of what's ahead of them, we need to lose 150 pounds, they're going to crack. That's like, we need you to be awesome for your entire life and not get rattled by anything. The baby sits down next to them and they go like, oh my God, nothing but this is too much. You go, no, for this moment, not even the 60 seconds, this moment right now, can you be chill? Can you be calm? This, like right now, just now. Not 60 seconds from now, certainly not an hour from now, but right now, can you be chill and calm? It's the same thing with trying to lose weight. It's not, you can't eat sweets forever. It's right now, this moment, right now, like right here as we're speaking. Because what people do is they get overwhelmed by the magnitude of the challenge. But this moment right here, right now, can you not eat a bag of Skittles? They go, yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to ask you that again. Right now, can you not eat a bag of Skittles? They go, yep. Okay, great. How about right now? Right now, can you not eat a bag of Skittles? And they go, yep. But what happens is they go like, yeah, but I can't do that forever. And that's when they go and they lean for the Skittles. We just got to keep like, we're playing a game. And right now, can you just bring your best self to this moment right now? We do that. You've done what you can with what you got for where you are with open-mindedness, positivity, and non-judgment.
Woo! 15 lessons in 15 years of coaching CrossFit Games athletes. I'm going to roll through them real quick to end it down. Number one, it's never about one event, one race, or one test. Number two, there's a lot of noise out there. Ignore it. 3, the right mindset won't make you win, but it can make you lose. 4, different things work for different people. 5, winning takes obsession. Obsession might not be healthy. 6, it's not going to be perfect. Do what you can with what you have. 7, everyone is working hard, but few are dialed in. 8, actions speak louder than words. 9, you have to be prepared enough for things to go wrong and still be okay. 10, better people make better athletes. 11, be authentically you at all times. 12, a big part of coaching is telling people what they don't want to hear. 13, success and happiness are not the same thing, but they are not opposite either. 14, pressure is exactly what you think it is. And 15, it's a game. There are more important things. Ben, this was phenomenal. Thanks for your time today, man.
Thank you, DJ. Appreciate it, man. Good
How
times.
can my listeners support you and follow your journey? The floor is yours here.
Well, the biggest thing that we got going on that I've going on right now is CompTrain. It's a training platform. It's an app. It's in the App Store. It's called CompTrain. And it's basically what I've done is taken the lessons I've taken the lessons I've learned over the last 15 years and created an online training, physical training platform for people that want to train hard. It's not necessarily about trying to get people to, walk 100 meters unbroken on their hands or be able to do 30 unbroken ring muscle ups. It's not necessarily just about the sport of CrossFit. It's about for people like you, DJ, and me, and my dad, and the guy that that coached my son's soccer team and the Division I athletes. It's really effective, accessible training built for you. That's what this is about. If you believe that training hard matters, if you believe it's a necessary ingredient to becoming the best version of you, this is a training platform that we talk about all these things and give people an opportunity to train, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours, where you can go in and select how much time you want to train. And then every day also get this drip of mindset and approach to life as well.
So cool. Ben, thanks for your time today, man. This is a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you, DJ.